I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner Podcast. Today I'm talking to Anthony and Saun Galang from Honolulu, Hawaii. They met in the Bay Area and went on to the mission team to Manila, Philippines, and later led ministries in Thailand, Los Angeles, and most recently, Hawaii. Listen as they share how they met, what it was like giving up medical careers for the ministry, and what their secret is to raising a spiritual family. All this and more on the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no-regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. I hope you're planning on going to the Climb Small Church Leadership Conference in Dallas, Texas, November 30th through December 3rd of 2023. It's going to be a fantastic time. If you're a grower, if you're a planter, if you're a leader, you need to go to this conference. We're going to have leaders from around the country and around the world coming, sharing their ideas, and we're going to be talking about how to break through log jams, bottlenecks, obstacles that are holding us back from expanding the kingdom of God. It's going to be an amazing time. So please look forward to that, and please get registered soon. As soon as we have our registration up, it's going to be up soon. Today on the podcast, I have Saun and Anthony Galang, interviewed by myself and my wife, Pam. And I'm really looking forward to this because I went to school with Anthony. We were actually converted within a couple months of each other at UC Berkeley in the Bay Area. And I've known Anthony, of course, since we were young Christians. He was a little bit older than me, just a couple years. And he's always been a huge inspiration to me as an older brother. He went on to plant the church in Manila, Philippines with his wife, Saun. They led to the church there, and it's inspiring to hear their story and what they're sharing. So please look forward to joining my wife and myself as we talk to Saun and Anthony Galang. Saun and Anthony, welcome to the program.
Aloha. Great to be with you guys.
It's
Go
great.
Bears.
Great to, I know. It's great to have that connection. UC Berkeley. Go Bears.
Keeps me humble from all their sports teams.
I know.
They've let me down consistently year after year. I can count on it.
I know.
Many years I've thought, okay, this is the year the football team is going to do great, and they'll start really strong and just tank halfway through the season.
I know.
You can pretty much bank on it.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
back in the day, I used to think, well, it's because people are so smart at UC Berkeley, you can't get good football players because the academics are so high. But then Stanford started winning, and I thought, okay, they're taking away our excuse here.
I know.
I don't know. I don't have any more excuses anymore.
I don't either. I've become a fan of men and women swimming and rugby.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right.
But don't forget Aaron Rodgers.
I know.
You know?
How'd you guys become Christians?
Well, Saun became a Christian before I did, so maybe you can share.
I'll start. So I was a junior in college. I was at the University of San Francisco. I was a nursing student, and I was dating back then. And my friends started going to Bible studies at San Francisco State. And I tell you what, he came back super different with deep convictions. And it was pretty impressive. And I started going to church with him to bring him back to our church, our big denominational church. But as we can see, the word of God went over all those traditions. So yeah, I became a Christian my junior year, college.
Wow.
Yeah, for me, I actually became a Christian my last year in college, and I was an RA in the dormitories. Little plug, that's a great way to get through college, get some free room and board. But I actually had a bad relationship in college, and I was coming from a relationship that was very ungodly and very immoral, and it really hit a rock bottom point where I really started needing and searching for God. And lo and behold, my boss in the dorms was a disciple. Her name was Jackie Lewis.
Oh, Jackie.
I don't know if you remember her, Rob.
Oh, yeah. I think Jackie was the first person I remember giving me a hug when I came to church the first time.
Oh, wow.
She had a huge hug. I mean, just
She sure did.
all encompassing. Just pulled you in.
Yes.
Yeah, she had a huge hug, infectious smile, incredible spirit. And, I would go, she was my boss, and, I would go and confide with her and tell her about all my problems and what I was going through. And she introduced me to a couple campus ministers, Doug Beatty and Eddie Marquez.
Wow.
And they came over and started studying the Bible with me. And, back then it was like you're studying the Bible really fast if you have a study once a week. And they set those things up, and it took me many months to become a Christian. It took me 6 months to study the Bible. I grew up in a large denominational Catholic faith, and I wasn't a good Catholic whatsoever, but it took me a lot to kind of give all those traditions and rituals up to find loyalty in the Word of God. So, yeah, that's how I became a Christian back in 1986.
Okay, what month in 1986?
That was February 21st, 1986.
Okay, so we got baptized within just a couple months of each other, because I was baptized April 4th, 1986.
Wow, man, Doug Beatty must have been so fired up.
I mean, it was crazy. There were tons of people getting baptized. That I talked to Tom Brown recently over in Georgia, and he pulled out a bulletin. It was blow away to see all those names. It was crazy. And amazing. It is amazing. Okay, so you're baptized then. You were a senior?
I was a senior, yes.
Okay, I was a junior at that time. Okay, great. What about you, Saun?
I was a junior. Actually, Doug Beatty counted the cost with me too. We studied sin with Doug. Back then, the guys would study with the girls too.
Okay.
Yeah. A little humbling because my boyfriend had already been baptized, so I couldn't really lie about my sin and my past and my morality. But yeah, good times. But being a college student in San Francisco and watching just the Berkeley ministry grow like crazy. And then San Francisco State, that also began to grow quite a bit. Right. It was amazing times to see the number of college students getting baptized.
Right. Yeah. Now, when were you baptized? You may have said it already.
1984.
Oh, 84. Okay, so you're baptized a couple of years before that. Okay, great. Now, Anthony, let's talk a little bit about that time. What was your experience at Cal? Like, how did you view things? I've shared about this before, but what was your view of the campus ministry and your time there?
Yeah, it was an amazing time. Becoming part of the church there with Tom Brown, Tom Snyder, Tom Marks, Luigi Lisi. He was the Church of Christ preacher there. I had never heard the Word of God preached quite like I was hearing, and it really drew me in and attracted me. And I just remember the passion and the spirit of the young zeal, wanting to do greater things in life. And we all go to college because we want to try to find a way that we can make a difference in life. And I sense that from the campus ministry. I think when we were all part of that campus ministry, Rob, there were well over 100 disciples from the Berkeley campus ministry.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
I just remember the passion, the sacrifice, the dreams of winning the world. And that's the very reason why I gave up med school, because that was the time in my life where I had to make a decision. I got accepted to a couple med schools, and I really had to pray about, what is the calling that God has for me. So, yeah, I just love those times. I love the public preaching at Sproul. I love the,
the internships, and you guys would spend the night at the Dan and Durant building and have crazy times running around with Garrett Gin and
I know it.
Marquez,
Yeah.
Mark Steiner, all those guys.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we'd have those Rocky Balboa nights with the brothers, sleepovers, and we'd drink raw eggs in the morning to, make ourselves tough. But those are great memories.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was awesome. I remember just, after church, we would go from the Dan and Durant building and walk over to Sproul Plaza and do public preaching. I remember Ed Marquez on the steps there, the bookstore, preaching, and it was really fun. It was exciting. Never knew what to expect. But one thing you could count on is there's always going to be baptisms. There were baptisms all the time. It just seemed like automatic. Just seemed like it's just, I know a lot of work went into it, but from my view as a young Christian, it's like people are just wide open, becoming Christians right and left.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about that. You were going to become a doctor, but you gave it up. Okay. Do you ever regret not becoming a doctor?
Yeah, honestly, not really. And what I say by that is, because one, I would have been in a lot more school debt if I had gone, if I chose that path. But I've certainly had moments over the last going on 38 years of being a disciple. I've had moments of imagining what it would have been like to be a doctor, a Christian doctor. But in terms of regrets, I really don't genuinely have any regrets. I mean, I've definitely thought of during the difficult times of ministry, well, I should have been a doctor, or I should have just gone to my hometown and sold cookies. I would have been fine with that. But I've always wanted to help people, and I've told myself that God has helped me to become a spiritual physician and not just a physical one. I think that's what's helped me to keep persevering in what I've been doing. But and I desire those days where young people are giving up careers again, to serve in the ministry and go on missions. I sense that spirit is coming back, but that was the spirit back when we were disciples in the campus ministry. Give up everything, go anywhere, do anything.
Yeah, it felt like back then we were all dreaming. I remember the Munich church going out, they're trying to plant the Manila church. You go to Boston, it was just like, wow, this is amazing. But it felt like the mission was greater than ourselves. That's what it felt like. It's like, sure, I'll give this up. The mission's greater. God's mission is greater than what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. So how did you make that decision? You're a senior, you just got baptized. Like, how'd you come to that crossroads where you had to decide? Like, were you thinking about going to the ministry? I mean, you'd just become a Christian. So like, what led you to go away from the medical field?
I mean, that was literally months, right? You went into the ministry.
Wow.
You were baptized.
Well, I was given the opportunity to be an intern there at the Berkeley Church, later that year, 1986. But that was the same time that I'd gotten, accepted to a couple schools. And when I became a Christian, I wrote, you remember the days where we'd have to actually type a letter with a typewriter? I had to type, lick a stamp and mail it to the dean of the medical school in Chicago. And it was basically a request that I'd like to see if I could defer my enrollment for another year. And thankfully he accepted that, and I was deferred enrollment. But as I started growing just as a young Christian and just gathering more dreams of how my life could be used and where could I serve God and how could I serve God, my heart for medicine really started declining, and my passion grew more and more for this is how my life can make the biggest difference in people's lives eternally, spiritually, helping them find God. And so the time came for me to decide whether I was going to enter that deferred class or not. And so I wrote the dean of the medical school again and basically communicated to him that thank you for accepting me, but I've found a better way for my life, and I'd like you to give up my spot for someone else who really wants to go. Wow. And I remember mailing it in the mailbox, and it was a mark in my time, a mark in life where I wasn't going to go chasing after the mailman to get that letter back. It was a stake in the ground, a step of faith that said, God, my life is in your hands, my direction is in your hands, and that's when I decided that medical school was not going to be the path for me, and soon after I got the opportunity to be an intern, and it just went from there.
Yeah. Wow. So awesome. Now, talking about that time, you were quite an athlete, as I recall. There's of course a lot of people there, but I remember didn't you play squash and tennis? I mean, can you tell me a little bit about your athletic background?
Yeah, I competed in a number of sports growing up, judo, and then junior tennis in California. But then I just got tired of losing to the same guys every week in tennis, so I got burned out real fast. But those skills carried over into college, and I discovered the game of squash in college. And so I played for the Berkeley team there, and that was a joy. It was actually the time in which I was studying the Bible too and learning how to become a Christian. And I remember I got baptized on a Friday night, like about 11 o'clock at night at the Dana Durant building, and church leaders there. It was freezing cold baptistry there. You probably remember that, Rob.
Yep. That's where I was baptized too.
The next morning, the squash team left for the East Coast to go play in the intercollegiate. So we played about 6 different colleges back east. But I remember back then the spirit was, oh no, this young Christian, Anthony, you're leaving on a trip. Oh no, he's going to fall away. How are you going to do this? And so I remember flying out of San Francisco, People's Express. You guys remember that airline?
Oh, that's right, People's Express. Sure.
And so I just remember being a new Christian flying to New York and all those Pennsylvania, everything like that. And I remember I really didn't. I wanted to be on this trip, but I didn't want to be on this trip. I wanted to be back and just grow spiritually. And so it was just a funny trip. I remember the first service was at the Central Park Church of Christ when Steve and Lisa Johnson were preaching. And I remember it was in February. So I, from the hotel, I had to walk through Central Park all by myself in my ski jacket and just to try to find the Central Park Church of Christ. I remember walking in, not knowing anyone. It was such a warm environment. I sat in the front row. I heard Steve Johnson preach. It was mind-blowing. I was so inspired. After the sermon, I went up to Steve and waiting in line, just introduced myself. Hey, I'm Anthony Galang from the Berkeley Church. Great job. Love this. And then I hugged him, and then I just kind of turned around and walked out. I didn't even fellowship because I didn't know anything. But I was a young Christian of 2 days.
Wow.
But I just remember, God, this is so incredible. And so, that was that. I don't even know why I threw that in there, but it was just a memory of my early days of becoming a Christian.
That's great.
And playing squash, playing on the team.
That's awesome. Now, you guys, how long have you been married?
This year is 34 years.
Ooh, wow. Congratulations. That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit, how did you guys meet? Who liked who first? Give us kind of the backstory on your relationship.
Okay. Well,
you tell your story, and
okay.
I'll tell mine.
Right. That's what we're hoping.
See if it works.
So we were both interns in a church. But you know how it was? Well, I'm sure it's the same. There's always the few single brothers everybody likes. And I remember thinking, I am not waiting in line for this guy, Anthony. I am not, everybody likes him. You know how that is. We're always talking, the sisters in fellowship.
Oh, yeah. I can relate. Yes.
Yes. And so I remember he asked me on a date. It was one of those missions luncheon. Remember, we would have a spaghetti luncheon we were always raising money for missions. We had a spaghetti luncheon, and Anthony and I went on this date, and our double was my co-leader in the campus, and we were best friends, this brother. So this brother and I talked and laughed the whole time, even though Anthony was my date. And it just wasn't a very encouraging time. Sorry about that, honey. I think I just wasn't interested back then. And everyone was trying to push us together. And I'm like, no, there's all those other sisters.
So you like me now?
I love him now. I'm ball one now. Well, number two.
I think it's funny. So yes, we met in church. Again, Saun's ex-boyfriend brought her into church, and we became Christians independently. And so, yeah, I mean, Saun did not want to marry a Filipino guy at all. And so, lo and behold, I'm married to her, and he's giving her 2 Filipino boys. It's a Filipino family. Yeah, but that's how we met. We met in church. And I remember back then, dating and encouragement dates were really emphasized. And I didn't want to date because I'd just come from a bad relationship, and my understanding of dating was just still very worldly, and I needed to be taught what good, pure, wholesome building of relationships was all about. And I remember the brothers, we take out the old paper church directory. The brothers would go over every sister's single name, and you should go, we'd just go through it. And the brothers would coach me and try to encourage me to go out on dates. And it was fun. It was fun learning how to do that. But that's how we eventually, Saun didn't like me. Our first date was horrible. We were both prideful towards each other, would not give. Second date was a little bit better. We ended up throwing rocks at each other at one point, but things have worked out.
Things have gotten better. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just realized we were compatible. We liked the same things, listened to the same music.
Right.
It was, yeah.
So can I ask, because you guys were single when you were asked to go to Manila, right? You were not married yet. Is that what I remember? Yeah.
You were dating.
You were dating.
Yeah, we were dating.
You were dating.
Yeah, we were dating. This was back in 1989. We were dating by then, a handful of months, and then we eventually got married, or not married, but engaged before we went on the Manila mission team in 1989.
Okay, so before we get into that, okay, I've got a couple more memories. I remember, Anthony, you were always really quiet. I remember thinking, this guy is super quiet and super spiritual, like Mr. Holy. And, I can totally imagine you being a doctor, just cool hand Luke, just keeping that scalpel just like in the perfect position. But I definitely remember, and I also remember, I thought, whoa, you were a little bit older, and I really looked up to you because I thought this guy is really composed and quiet and spiritual. And I remember, now this is where it gets fuzzy because I don't remember if I was actually there or if I heard Doug Beatty talk about it. He said that there was a couple that was fighting, a man and a woman. And Doug said he didn't know what to do, but he said that you just stepped in and just calmed them down immediately. Do you remember that story? You remember that incident?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I've never heard this story. This is good.
Yeah.
I think you might have heard this story.
Was it me?
But, wow, your impressions of me, Rob, thank you, of those great impressions. I think it's more of, back then, I didn't know how to express my emotions, and I was insecure and quiet. Okay, but no, I do remember I was actually visiting Doug, and I was parking underneath his apartment complex, and I heard in the parking structure this woman screaming and just the guy yelling. And so I walked around the corner to see what was going on. And this young college student, they were having an all-out fight to the point where there was physical abuse going on. And I stepped in. I said, "Hey, what's going on? How can I help you?" Or in so many words. And so the guy turned to me, not to fight me or anything like that, but he started kind of confessing kind of what was going on, because they were little did I realize they're in a bad breakup right now, and the guy did not want to break up with this girl, and she wanted very much to. And so I was able to at least diffuse a little bit of the emotional heightened things that were going on. And I brought him outside. I sat him outside, kind of both of them, and then I eventually talked to the guy and calmed him down. And yeah, they didn't continue hurting each other at that point. But that was right in front of Doug's apartment.
Wow. You still do that, honey?
Yeah.
Not me, but others.
I mean, that
it was a wild, and I'm another college student as well. It's like,
right.
These are peers, and it was just kind of crazy.
That was their wasn't there apartment right there in College, like right above the intramural fields there across the street?
Exactly where Doug used to live. Yeah. It's at that apartment complex, right?
I remember
there.
Doug telling me, and it he was blown away, and that just heightened your stature in my eyes. I'm like, whoa, that guy, he's got like a calming influence in people's lives. He's courageous. And another thing, Anthony, were you at one point thinking about becoming a Catholic priest?
A Catholic priest?
No,
I don't think ever a Catholic priest. My sister was going to become a Carmelite nun, but
okay, I could have gotten confused.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, well, the legend was growing. Okay,
the legend was growing. Yeah.
And the myth.
Okay, so can you guys just give a quick overview of your career in ministry? Where have you guys been?
You want to?
Yeah, so we became Christians in the Berkeley Church of Christ. Back then, we're interns, and then in 1989 they were forming the team to go to Manila, Philippines, and so we interviewed for that. Helped form that team with Preston and Sandy Shepard, and we were in Manila.
28 of us on the Manila mission team.
28 young, very young, probably the average age 24.
Yeah, we were like the spiritual bad news bears.
Yeah.
We were like,
that was it. We had a dream. We had a mission. We knew God had, we were born Filipino for a reason. So we wanted to go and preach the word to our people. But so we were there in 1989 in Manila till about 92. And then we made a switch and we led Bangkok, and while we were in the Philippines, Preston and Sandy left. We led the church for about a year and a half, and then switched places with John and Emily Bryn-Gardner in Bangkok, Thailand. So we switched our dreams to Southeast Asia, which was pretty awesome.
Okay, so wait a second. So you were leading the church in the Philippines for a little while?
Yeah, we led the church after Preston and Sandy got called to go to San Francisco. And so we led the Manila church for a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so what year was that? I didn't realize that. That was probably 91.
It was 91. I was pregnant with Nick.
Okay, so 91. How big was the church at that time?
The church was probably
maybe 600, 700.
Probably 500-600, something around there.
My gosh.
Wow.
And you guys are so young at that time. That's crazy.
Right. No kids.
And no technology.
No technology.
I think we had pagers.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's just that Manila mission team, certainly special. God has prepared the Philippine nation in a special way. I mean, the Filipino people are very reverent of God, but yeah, that first year with 28 disciples, there were over 400 baptisms.
Wow.
Gosh.
And that didn't include all the hundreds of more that studied the Bible and didn't decide to become Christians. And so it was a special time. to see God moving. And I believe the work in the Philippines helped inspire, more churches around the world to believe that
Right.
the harvest is plentiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very, very special time.
It was very special.
Do you guys speak Tagalog?
Konti lang. We speak food in many ways. Unfortunately, no, we don't. I think being American, they were so intrigued by these Americans giving up their schooling, coming back to the Philippines, and so we're kind of an anomaly. But we do speak food, and we know how to get to the bathroom and
Sure.
things like that.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting because when Preston and Sandy came back, they came back like a week or two after we got, or actually right when we got married. That's when they came back. That was August of 1990. And so that's when you guys took over the church, right? During that time?
Yeah, that was the time.
Wow.
That
Oh
was
my
very-
gosh. I didn't realize that. I didn't know you guys were taking over the church. You guys were so young at that age. You're like 27 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is hard to imagine looking back.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, we were young in our marriage, expecting our first child, but we relied on. Do you remember those discipleship magazines or disciple
yeah.
magazines?
Oh,
Yep.
yes.
I would read that over and over. Any book we had, we needed help.
Yeah.
Great mentors back then.
Yeah. I think Marty Wooten was the editor of that discipleship magazine.
Yeah. Marty.
crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. It's so interesting, but it's something that I think I've talked about before in the podcast, but back then people were younger and you led more earlier. I mean, even though that's still remarkable, it wasn't out of the ordinary for a young person to lead a larger church. I mean, it happened. It happened with regularity. I mean, we were leading a church at like 25 but to lead a church of 400 or 500 at 27, I just go, today it seems like, oh my gosh, you guys were still in the cradle to be doing that.
Right.
But
Oh, that's exactly what it is. It's like throwing a baby into the pool without any floaters, right?
Right, exactly.
but you had a lot of energy and a lot of faith. Okay, so you were there from August of 90 to, when did you go to Bangkok?
That was in 92.
92.
Sometime in 92.
Yeah.
We were asked to lead the church in Bangkok, and boy, what an incredible adventure that is, as you guys know. And
amazing church. I think there's about 60 disciples when we got there, and it was amazing being in a Buddhist country. It was like teaching babies the right way to become Christians. They weren't
blank tape.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't crowded out by all these other denominations. It was an amazing time.
Wow. And
So we were there for a year. Thailand reminds me a lot of the Corinthian church, lots of idolatry, lots of sin, and it was absolutely another miracle of God to see Thai people become disciples. Amazing.
But a very endearing place to be. They're very endearing people, the Thai people. I think we actually speak a little bit more Thai than Tagalog.
Yeah, I
And
was
we
going to
like,
ask.
we like Thai food.
We
probably
do like
more.
Thai food also.
Okay.
So can I ask, so when you made that switch, so the Bring Gardeners went to the Manila and you guys went to Bangkok, was it a sense like, hey guys, now this is your mission, like you're here in Thailand? Like was that, or was it like you're going to be here for a couple years to kind of make a transition, or did you think, okay, this is now our country, like these are going to be our people?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, great question. When we moved to the Philippines, we really believed that was our last geographical destination, just because we were convinced, being Filipino, this was our life mission, to stay there, to live there. And so when we were called to leave the Philippines, it really, I think, we had to change our dreams. I mean, our dreams for the Philippines didn't necessarily die, but it's like, okay, what is God doing? So I think that's what we've had to do over our ministry career, is when God has called us to move to different places, we've had to expand our heart and our dreams wherever he sends us. And
Yeah.
and so to answer your question, yeah, we had to start dreaming for Thailand
Yeah.
and Southeast Asia.
There was never a time frame given. It was just like, this is your mission, this is your people. So it was
Mhm.
Vietnam, it was Cambodia. It was, we weren't there long enough to work with Myanmar, but it was taking on the Southeast Asian dream.
Mm. Wow.
Okay, so how long were you there? You were there a year in Bangkok?
We were there for 1 year, almost 1 year exactly in Bangkok. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what?
And then after that, we were asked to move to the Los Angeles church in 93.
Okay,
Wow.
spring of 93, right around that time period?
It was a time
Yeah,
period where there was a lot of changes going
Yeah.
Oh,
around.
yeah.
in
Yeah.
the kingdom, a lot of changes in 93.
Yeah, Washington, yeah, DC, and it just kind of had a trickle effect.
There was a domino effect happening. Leaders were moving to different places, and we were, we were kind of swept into those changes. And so, yeah, it was very unexpected. But back then, when you were asked, you were more inclined to go.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I definitely remember that. And it was that very same time period. I think it started with a shift because Doug Arthur wanted to go to D.C.
Russ
wanted to go to San Francisco.
Shepherds went back
Shepherds
to
went
the
back
Philippines.
to the Philippines at that time, right?
That impacted us.
That impacted us. That's what brought us to Japan, right? During that time, we were in San Francisco, had been in the Northwest prior to that, and that brought us to Japan. With Frank and Erica Kim. So just a little sidebar. Okay.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever told you look quite a bit like Frank Kim?
How often do you get that?
Oh, that is so fun. I love it. And I love Frank Kim. We love Frank and Erica. Yes. I'll tell you a funny story here, but yes, I've gotten that quite a bit, especially when Frank does a main speech at a conference. I always get mistaken as Frank. And so we were at I don't remember what year it was, but it was a Boston conference, and it was at the end of Sunday service. And up until that point, I probably got mistaken as Frank probably about 10 to 15 times during that conference. And so after church on Sunday, I had such an identity crisis of who I was. And so I remember deciding I am not going to take the T back to the hotel with everyone else. I'm just going to walk home to the hotel. And so as I'm walking through the streets of Boston and the crowd starts to thin more and more, I get to a stoplight intersection, and another brother is there beside me at the corner. And I turned to him, I said, "Hey, do you know where the such and such hotel is?" And he goes, "Yeah, I know where it is. I can drive you. You want to ride?" And I said, "Oh, okay, great." And so I get in his car, and we're weaving through the streets of Boston, probably another 15 minutes to get to my hotel. And we stop at the front of the hotel. I say, "Hey, bro, thanks a lot for the ride." And then he goes, "Hey, has anyone ever told you remind people of Frank Kim?" And I just look at him from the passenger seat, and I said, Yes, people have told me I look like Frank Kim. And I just thanked him. I didn't go into the explanation at all or anything like that. And so that was that. But Frank and I have had a hoot, with this over the years to the point where Frank and I actually exchanged our name tags for a day at one of the conferences.
Oh my gosh.
Just to mess people up. So
that's hilarious.
That is so funny. That's hilarious.
It is an honor to be mistaken as Frank.
Yeah. Okay, so you're in LA, and tell me what happened.
Yeah, what was that like?
What was it like between 93 and then 2012?
Wow, yeah, we were there for a long time.
We were there for 20 years. Yeah.
But we started off in the central region, which was super fun. It was Glendale area, Pasadena, and we were going to help lead the region and USC. And poor Anthony, coming from Berkeley, all these
Pac-12
schools that now he had to give his heart to. But So we worked with the students there, which was just a blast. I think we were
We
there.
baptize them longer at these other Pac-12 schools. We just leave them under the water a little bit longer.
But that was fun. And you know, Kip had asked us to come to LA because they needed some Asian leadership, and he had a vision of having like an Asian region or Asian sector. And so we tried that. Probably the best food, best potlucks ever, but the different languages was pretty hard to translate. You know, we had Korean, we had Chinese, we had Mandarin, we had Tagalog, we had Japanese. So that really didn't work out well, but it was fun being in the Central for about 5 years, I believe. It was 7 years we were there.
Yeah, I mean, our time in LA, I think, was another learning whirlwind time for us as Christians. I remember, you know, coming from Asia and then coming to LA, you know, I learned how different church families function and how, you know, each church may have different qualities or characteristics and how things work. But it was, we were still young going to LA. We're probably not even 30 years old yet. I mean,
Yeah.
and so it was very different working with a highly diverse community of people. And you know, in Asia we were some of the oldest Christians, but now in LA we were not really that old compared to some of the other disciples that were there. It was a real learning experience on how to learn to become all things to more people, both in the church and outside the church. And so
Such a fun time though.
Yeah,
Still great friends from those times.
You know, certainly our LA church has been a flagship church for our movement for many, many years. And yeah, it was an honor being there. But it was also at the same time, very fast paced, we had to learn quite a bit, and you know, lots of dreams, lots of high expectations. And we certainly, you know, grew a lot there.
Yeah. Yep. So from the central region of Los Angeles, we moved to the Inland Empire, which is, you know, way in the suburbs off the 10 freeway.
Rancho Cucamonga. I remember you guys lived there. Yeah. I thought, what kind of town is that, son? What? That's where you live?
Yeah, it took me a while to learn how to spell that one.
Yeah.
But yes. This is,
Yeah, we loved, you know, we were from the Central, and then we moved to the Inland Empire. We were there for about 8 years or so.
Yeah.
And then from the Inland Empire, we were asked to move to the West region. And so we spent total 20 years in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And lots of great memories. You know, lots to see the church grow, and, you know, birth pains and everything in between.
Yeah, I think it was an invaluable time of training for us and building just these friendships and mentors that have helped us along the way. It was invaluable. I mean, we had elders around us, we had mature leaders, we had a lot of our own friends, but it was just an invaluable time being in LA for 20 years. And you know, we were there during the firestorm in 2003. That was difficult. It was a difficult time, and, you know, learning how to navigate through that with Alan Gloria and John and Nancy Mammal. That was just super, and it's super important time of training.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what led you to Hawaii? How'd you get to Hawaii?
Yeah.
The grace of God.
The grace of God.
No kidding. No kidding.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like when Saun and I went on the Manila mission team back in 1989, you know, 28 of us were there at the San Francisco airport saying goodbye to our families, the 2 suitcase challenge, and everyone's weeping, everyone's crying. We have no idea when we're ever going to see each other again. And then when we were asked to come to Hawaii, No one felt sorry
Yeah,
for us,
nobody
right?
wept.
No tears. No tears.
There's no there's nothing, right? No celebration whatsoever. Yeah, no one wept. There was nothing like that. So, that was back in 2012, and I think for us, it was a really interesting time for me spiritually, because for me, there was a weird time for me spiritually. I felt like that my time had come to an end in the Los Angeles church there. And I think it had a lot to do with me just being in a spiritual state of just wondering whether God wanted me and Saun to continue serving in the full-time ministry. I really started questioning whether this was the future plan, for us to continue serving. And there were a lot of moving parts that were happening in the LA church at that time. But I really entertained leaving the full-time ministry, and to start considering, other employment, other work. I mean, Saun even started looking into renewing her nursing boards, to
Nursing license.
her nursing license. And that's a funny thing too, right? I mean, Saun left nursing to go into the ministry after about 3 months, serving as a nurse.
Wow.
Her parents did not like that at all.
I bet.
Wow.
Tens of thousands of dollars spent. But what I try to do is I try to get sick every week.
Yes.
Just to keep her nursing skills.
That is another podcast about compliance.
Yes.
Patient
Yeah,
compliance.
that's another. So it was a different time, because it was a time of wonder and questioning God about the next stage of our life. And then out of the blue, a conversation was brought to us about the possibility of going to Hawaii. And we didn't really have any kind of history or relationships with any of the Hawaiian churches. But I think it was a time in our life where any kind of conversation like that, I took that as like a kiss from God, that God still wants us to serve in this capacity in some form, whether it be Hawaii or anywhere else. Honestly, it was just a kiss from God. I just needed some heavenly affirmation that this is the door God wants us to go. And so that was in 2012.
Yeah.
And there were many people involved in what was happening. The churches in Hawaii, specifically Oahu, was going through some leadership transition and change.
Yeah. I remember we came out in July to interview with the church, and they offered us the job. And I remember they kind of announced it like during church. Scott Miyashiro had called us and offered us the job, and I think we said yes, and people are cheering. And then we went back and told our church, and it was complete silence. But we left, we interviewed July, and we landed in August. So it was a month transition. But again, as Anthony said, it was just spiritual affirmation. The 20 years that we spent in LA working, just invaluable knowledge from working with elders, other region leaders, sector leaders, missionaries. It was amazing to be able to bring back that to the Hawaiian Islands, to the people here. It's an amazing, amazing church. We love it.
Okay, so do you guys have like a ministry philosophy? I know that I've talked to people who have been to the church there, and they rave about your leadership. What is it that drives your ministry philosophy?
Yeah, I think something that we've learned over the years is that leading a church is very, very similar to leading a family. And, I think that's the model that we've tried to use most of our ministry life. It hasn't always been that way, because I just think over the years we've learned that a church is a church family that has so many different variables and dynamics and emotions and needs. And the family model to us is the philosophy that we try to live by. Yeah, and to me, I think of words like health, I think of spirituality, I think of love, I think of compassion, doing your best, you're good enough, the grace of God, the mercy of God.
Right.
That's, we've tried to build church more to be more like a hospital than a courtroom. And I think we've had to learn how to be comfortable with who we are and not try to be someone else.
Yeah. I would say during the years, I made a lot of mistakes. The church was a sports team. The church was a business, that's sort of the model that we were using, or I was using, and it never felt right. And I do think, by the grace of God, through all those mistakes that I made, those challenges, I think the family model is the one that does work best, because that's what I need. And that's what I needed from God. And that's why I became a Christian, because of the grace of God. And so it's what God's people deserve. It's not about our kids being perfect. I don't love my kids because they're perfect. I love them because they're my kids. And so this family model that we've learned through, just a lot of trials, challenges, and mistakes, it just makes sense. We're God's family.
I love that. Well, speaking of family, you guys have two really wonderful boys who are both married. And, you really seem to have a tight-knit family. I think it's so cool that you're all in the same place. The goal's right there. We had that. I want it back. But what's the secret? What would you share in terms of your parenting, just the unity, the love that you guys have for each other?
No, that's a great question. And
I think first of all, when we were asked to move to Hawaii, Chris was going to be a junior in high school, and he was just a part of an awesome teen ministry there with Ruben Deanda. There's a lot of disciples at his school, and Culver City. He was, I think, one of the other disciples were going to be junior president. He was going to be junior vice president of his class, and we gave him the option. You can stay here, live with other disciples, graduate, from high school with all your friends, or you can come move with us. And we gave him that choice. Of course, we were hoping he would move with us. We knew he would be an amazing asset here. But I think when I think about my kids, okay, so we sent them a text. We're like, boys, what do you think it was? What do you think it is?
Good. Yeah.
It is. And, it's one of them said supporting each other in whatever interests or life stages we're at, talking things through during tough times, being able to serve communities, being in each other's lives together and other people's lives, all of us loving Jesus. I think, Nick said that we had a calm home environment. And, I do remember thinking, I want a home and a family where the kids want to come home to. They want to come home. And you know how it is in the ministry, it's crazy. But I remember during that time, they'd come home from like 3 to 4, 3 to 5. I'd kind of just act like I was theirs. I'd cook dinner. I'd try not to have appointments, try not to be on the phone all the time, and unless they were doing homework. But I wanted an environment that they wanted to come home to. And it was interesting because Nick said, I felt like our home was, he called it a Hanai home, but like a second home to a lot of the kids, a lot of the teens. We always had someone spending the night. We were always feeding. Someone was always coming with us to an event. But yeah, I think we wanted our family to be a place where the kids could bring their friends to and feel safe, and where they wanted to come home. You know, it wasn't going to be that. It's crazy enough in the world and the challenges in high school and middle school. We wanted a home that would be safe. We weren't perfect by all means. By all means.
Not at all. Not at all. And that question, Pam, I think it's a great one. Gosh, what's the secret? And I don't want to sound cliche because of our spiritual podcast here, but I mean, the secret sauce is God, and all credit and glory goes to him.
Yeah.
Because he has really taught Saun and myself, he's taught us how we need to be. He's taught us the kind of environment we need to try to create for our family and our kids. I think that's been, super important. I do think I am grateful for the hearts that God has given our boys. We don't take that for granted, that our kids are disciples and they're awesome wives, are Christians, and we're very humbled by that.
They live 12 minutes away from us.
Wow.
Yeah, and I do, and I admire how they have developed and the decisions they've made as young people over the years. I'm grateful for the village of support that our family has received over the decades.
Yeah.
We have not been the only ones to raise our kids. And I think over the years, Saun and I have just tried hard to evolve with our kids over time as parents. And we've done our best to lead by example, to apologize, to take our responsibility and where we've let them down. I think to stay emotionally connected with our boys has been something that's been so helpful. I mean, they still like hanging out with me, which I really love that. I think we've tried to evolve to be super supportive and their biggest cheerleaders in life, to really bring out the best in them. And as you mentioned, Rob and Pam, yeah, we feel so blessed that our family, and even my mom and dad, moved with us to Oahu back in 2012. And my dad has since passed about 9 years ago. But my mom turned 90 years old this last Saturday.
Wow. She
is still cranking for the Lord. She's part of what's called our G Squad, the Granny Squad. Handfuls of older sisters and widows, and they are passionate for the Lord. But it is a blessing that our whole family is here together. And I think one of the greatest joys that I'm experiencing as a dad right now is being able to be in Bible studies with my boys, as we're helping other people become Christians. Wow. And I just stop in the Bible studies as I get to listen to them just lift up God. And it is like surreal. It's an out of body experience. And I'm just so grateful. And I think that's what we're trying to do as a family. We're trying to build a legacy. We're trying to build a spiritual legacy where, not only are we serving in the church together, we're trying to serve the community together, and we're trying to just impact as many people as possible. Yeah. So wow, I think there's a lot of answers to the secret sauce, but it really does. It really does start with God, and we're indebted. We're thankful.
Well, I think you guys convey a real placid, calm demeanor. Mm-hmm. I think it permeates the area where you are. It's something I've noticed from 40 years ago, 35 years ago, and it's really powerful. It's inspiring. What advice would you give to a person who wants to live a no regrets life, wants to make the most of this life, make it count? What would you tell them?
You go first.
I love the phrase YOLO.
It is old, but
hey. It is old. It's a little outdated, but you only live once, and make it count. believe that your best days are ahead. And I think for Saun and myself, as we, enter our 60s, we still believe that our best days are ahead. And, we want this next decade to be the most impactful for God. We really believe that that's possible, and that, we have dreams to help other churches. We have dreams to become a modern day tent maker. We have dreams to help people become kingdom wealth builders, to give more back to people, to make a greater impact. But that's what I would say to anyone, to advise. We've got only a few short years to live on this globe, and we only have one life to live, and make it count for God.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. It was hard to choose one. I think as a disciple, to live a no regrets life is to remember that God is a God of abundance. He's not a God of scarcity. He wants to bless you. He is a good father. He's a great father. He wants to meet your needs. And I think even for myself, God was a scarce God. He wasn't giving out all the blessings all the time. He didn't want to bless me. I wasn't getting all the things that I had hoped for, dreamt for. And yet I think as an older disciple, just remembering that God is a God of abundance. And that, Anthony has really helped me with this, and many in the church, that we can live an abundant life with God. It doesn't have to be that we don't have enough, or we don't have what we want, or we won't be able to meet our dreams, or that God won't provide. God is the most amazing provider. And so I think when I think about a no regrets life as a disciple, remembering that God wants more for you than even what you've ever dreamed or imagined.
Wow. That's powerful.
That's awesome. So you guys are planning on staying in Hawaii, I'm assuming, going forward?
Where else could you retire? I mean, I don't know.
I know, you're already in paradise. So.
Right. Where do you go? Where do you go for vacation? Where do you retire? Right there.
Exactly.
I know. I think when Jesus does come back, like, all the disciples will have to go through Hawaii as the portal.
Yes.
Exactly. That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. Really appreciate it. It's just great to catch up again. I know we always spend time together whenever we see each other at conferences, whether it's Orlando. I remember in 2012, we were going to Tucson. You guys were going to Hawaii. That's during that same time period. And it's great to see our lives parallel each other in terms of the mission. So all the best to you guys going forward.
Love and respect you guys.
Yeah,
you
love
so
you guys.
God too. We love you.
You're incredible.
If you're enjoying this podcast, I'd like to ask your help and support through one of the following. First of all, please hit the subscribe button. Secondly, let your friends know about the podcast. It's amazing how impacting it is. And when I hear people share, someone sent me a link to the podcast, and just recently it happened, and man, it totally was a game changer. And so you don't know who you're going to impact just by simply sharing an episode that impacts you with a friend. It can totally change their life. Next, read and review one of my books, How to Plant and Grow a Church, which I'm currently reading right now. And then Courage, How to Make This Life Count. Because my goal is to inspire you to make this life count, live a no regrets life, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day, and make this life count.